Welcome to the team. Seriously, pull up a chair, grab your coffee. I am so glad you're here. As your lead engineer, my main goal today is to get you completely ramped up and ready to push your very first code. So in this explainer, we're going to walk through the absolute gold standard for how we handle AL testing for Business Central, specifically inside the Visual Studio Code IDE. We're doing things the modern way now, and this right here is your official onboarding guide to get you up to speed fast. Okay, let's dive right into this.
Right off the bat, our core philosophy here is super simple. We don't test in the web client anymore. We do it right here in the IDE. That is the mantra. We rely completely on the built-in Test Explorer workflow in Visual Studio Code to discover and run our AL tests. It keeps us focused, it keeps us right there in our editor, and honestly, it just means we don't have to juggle external test runners or, constantly tab over to the Business Central web client every 5 minutes.
All right, here is our onboarding schedule for today. Before you make your first commit, we are going to quickly cover setting up your workstation, finding and running tests, mastering test run profiles, a massive time saver we call the code coverage shortcut, and finally, environments and execution gotchas.
Let's start with Section 1, setting up your workstation.
Think of me hovering over your desk right now, just making sure we check off this mandatory workstation checklist. To run tests from Visual Studio Code, there are 2 strict prerequisites you absolutely must have in place. First, you need to ensure your Business Central is on version 28.0 or newer. That's the 2026 Release Wave 1. And second, you have to have the AL language extension for Visual Studio Code installed. Without these 2 pieces in place, the built-in testing features simply will not activate. So please, double-check those versions before you write a single line of AL code.
Moving right along to Section 2, finding and running tests.
So here is your incredibly straightforward daily action plan. Step 1, you just open the Test Explorer view in Visual Studio Code. The beauty of this tool is that it automatically detects test code units and methods in your active workspace. It's practically magic. Step 2, verify your list. The IDE smartly organizes things. Tests are sorted logically, first by their owning app, then by the code unit that declares them, and finally down to the specific test procedures themselves. Step 3, just select your test and hit run. And Step 4, review your execution progress and outcomes right there in the test results panel. It is so streamlined.
Okay, Section 3, mastering test run profiles. Now that you know where the tests are, we really need to talk about how we run them. As a developer, consider this your tool belt. Think of these like the different gear settings on a high-end power tool. You really need to know when to use each one. We have 4 run profiles. Publish and run is our default. This publishes the test project and any change dependencies before executing. It's your bread and butter, right? Next up is just run, which executes the tests without pre-publishing. Super handy if you know nothing structurally has actually changed. Then we have run and debug, which is absolutely crucial when a test fails and you really need to get under the hood. It publishes and attaches the debugger right away. Finally, we have coverage procedure, which runs the tests and actually collects procedure-level code coverage. And honestly, that specific profile leads me directly into my absolute favorite topic.
Section 4, the code coverage shortcut.
Okay, lean in for this one because I'm going to share a massive time-saving pro tip. This is the secret sauce that the senior developers on our team use to move incredibly fast. When you run that coverage profile we just talked about, the test run tracks the exact procedures and triggers invoked by each test. This information surfaces as a new feature called Code Lens. I want you to think of Code Lens as your development radar. It pops up directly above your relevant procedures and triggers right in the editor, showing you the vital connection between your source code and the tests that just ran. So, the absolutely crucial point here is this. Click the lens. When you make a change to a procedure, you do not need to run the entire test suite. You just click that new code lens and the IDE will intelligently execute only the specific tests that covered that exact procedure or trigger. You literally run only what matters. I'm telling you, if you make a habit of this, it is going to save you hours and hours of execution time over your career. It's just a perfectly targeted way to verify your code changes.
And that brings us to Section 5, environments and execution gotchas.
Okay, I'm putting on my serious mentor hat for a second. Testing in the IDE is super powerful, but there are strict rules, technical limitations, and a few catastrophic mistakes you really need to avoid. Treat these next rules as the mandatory terms and conditions of your employment here. Because tests run from Visual Studio Code actually bypass the AL Test Runner code unit, there are some major implications. First, running AI tests is currently not supported. Don't even try it. Second, any tests you write that rely on events published in a test runner for setup or teardown, yeah, they might not work, so be extremely careful with your architecture there. And lastly, isolation level. If you don't explicitly set it, the default isolation is at the code unit level.
And this brings me to a very firm reminder. Always configure your required test isolation property on the test code unit. If you ignore this, you're going to end up with that code unit level default isolation, which can lead to test data bleeding from one test into another. It is a classic rookie mistake that leads to super flaky test suites. We don't want that. So explicitly set your isolation property every single time.
Next up, where are you actually allowed to run these tests? Well, for Business Central version 28.0 and newer, our safe environments are limited to exactly 2 places. You can run them in our online sandbox environments, or you can run them on your local on-premises server installations. That is it. Those are your safe zones.
Which brings us to the career-saving rule. Never in production. I literally cannot stress this enough. Running tests on production environments is entirely unsupported and strictly forbidden, because it can and absolutely will affect live business operations. Believe me, you do not want to be the developer who accidentally creates dummy test records in the live customer database or locks up a critical production table. Stick to the sandbox.
And just like that, our onboarding session is complete. You know the workstation requirements, you know the tools in the Test Explorer, you know the CodeLens shortcut that's going to save you so much time, and you know the strict rules to protect our environments. But the real question is, how will these modern workflows completely transform the way we build and scale our apps moving forward? Are you ready to write your first test and find out? Get out there, open up VS Code, and let's see what you can build.